Urban exploration has become quite the thing now. Most just think of youngsters trying to blow off steam, but there's a strange pleasure in witnessing the decaying places of the world. Tom and I have been checking these places out for years now, since we were kids in fact. It's mostly just satanic graffiti, but when you find somewhere untouched, it truly is a snapshot from history. This one time, we found an abandoned university campus whilst we were road tripping. We'd have missed it if Tom hadn't spotted the concrete through the trees. The entrance into the grounds was completely overgrown, so he parked on the side of the road. "Hey Tom," I said. "Do we have face masks? Place is probably full of asbestos." "One for me and one for you," he said, slapping me across the face with it. He got a moderate whack to the balls for that. We got out of the car and started to look for a way to traverse the thick foliage. After about 10 minutes of walking, we came across a gap in the overgrowth, covered by a rusty barbed fence. "How on earth are we going to get over that?" said Tom. "Forget over. Look under." I pointed towards a gap under the fence. The people before us had clearly used to get in. We both scrambled under and continued forward. The path itself was still overgrown, but forgiving enough to allow us both through. The premises slowly but surely came into view. We stumbled into a wheezy courtyard with a small fountain in the middle. The heavily graffitied buildings surrounded the perimeter. It looked very secure, with all the doors and windows being boarded up. "I think we might be out of luck here, mate," I said to Tom. His eyes scanned the building, and he pointed. "Look, there's an unboarded window up there. That's our entry point." "Yeah, there is. But it's on the second floor. How are we gonna..." "Well done, genius," I said, rolling my eyes. Tom could be a real gorilla sometimes. "There must be a way in, though. Other people have come here." We scanned our surroundings for a few more minutes, but couldn't see a viable entrance. I sighed and leant up against the cracked wall. I could have sworn it shifted slightly. "Hey, Tom, get over here." It was then that I realised that only this part of the wall was badly cracked. "What is it, dude? I think we can get through here if we push hard enough." The both of us pushed against the wall. Sure enough, it began to crumble. The dust left us coughing, but we were pleased to see a hole large enough for us to crawl through. I squeezed through and found myself at the end of a long, skinny corridor. I couldn't see the end. "Dude, it's pitch black in here. Did you bring torches?" "No." "We've got some in the car though. I'll go get them." Tom hurried off. I hoped he'd be back soon. This place was giving me the creeps. My surroundings slowly fell to silence. The dust particles shimmered through the hole and reminded me to put my mask on. Several minutes dragged by, and my eyes began to adjust to the darkness. The place was absolutely rancid. The probably once white halls had been largely stained by a greyish-brown substance. Some of it was on the floor too. It smelled like urine. Everything went still. The silence somehow seemed more ominous than before. There was a scraping beneath my feet. It suddenly occurred to me that the floor was littered with bullet shells. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I peered into the depths of the corridor. It could have been my nerves getting the better of me, but it looked like there was a misty shape, maybe 200 meters away. I felt like it was somehow watching me, observing my movements. It felt like an eternity before the silence was broken. Footsteps. Tom had returned. "You right in there? Why didn't you wait outside?" said Tom, with a puzzled look. "Just come in here. Oh, and pass me a flashlight first." The torch came hurling through the hole and hit me on the leg. "Careful, these are expensive." They were military grade with long battery life. I flicked mine on and focused the beam down the corridor. No shape. Whatever it was, it gone. "What you looking at, buddy?" Tom said as he crawled through the hole. Just seeing how far back it goes. Have you seen the bullet casings, by the way? Oh yeah. Tom picked one up and inspected it, and then glanced around. He looked confused. I don't see any bullet holes. Do you? He was right. Nothing but stains and a bad smell. We ambled forwards at a snail's pace, trying doors on either side. Most were locked. We did find a couple of ancient-looking lecture theatres, but the chairs were stripped out, and anything of value had been taken. It wasn't until we reached the end of the corridor that we found anything interesting. There was a T-junction leading into a similar-looking corridor, but straight ahead was another door. It looked different from the others. It looked like a metal vault door, and stuck out in a place like this. The hinges and handle had rusted beyond belief, and the smell of urine had intensified greatly. Tom was holding his arm to his nose. What is that? He said, in a muffled voice. I think the squatters might have left us a little present, I said with a smirk on my face. My smile soon changed as I put my hand on the door. It was smeared in a sticky substance. Like touching a hot pan, I recoiled. There was a slight tingling sensation on my hand. I raised it up to give it a sniff. It was the same smell, although this time so intense I began to feel nauseated and lightheaded. The next thing I know, I'm on the floor, with Tom crouched beside me. I think the door just chloroformed you, dude, he said, laughing. Getting up and still feeling hazy, I managed a weak smile in response. We turned to the door, only to realise that it had actually been ajar. Tom pressed himself up against the gap and shone his torch through. Yeah, it's just stairs, he chuckled. He said, and began eyeballing the ground. What are you doing? I said as Tom began to walk around with his eyes on the floor. Aha, he said, and bent down to pick up a short wooden plank. It was perfect to prise the door open without touching it. It opened silently, which was surprising considering its condition. We both stood in the entrance, shining our flashlights around. It didn't smell in here at all, which was odd. They probably lead down to the basement, I said, looking at Tom. Nope. The door said janitor's closet, Tom replied, although I don't know why you'd need a vault door and stairs for that. We began our descent cautiously. Looking back, it somehow seemed darker than any other part of the building. Our torches weren't as effective, but we pressed on anyway. These were the U-turn style stairs, and we had covered 5 flights before I shone my torch down the void in the middle. Nothing. Just more stairs and blackness. Bloody hell, I half yelled. I can't even see the bottom. Dare you to jump, Tom sniggered. I just shot him a dirty look. I was feeling uneasy about this place, and wasn't in the mood for jokes anymore. Another 10 flights down, and neither was Tom. He peered over the edge. Still can't see the bottom, he sighed. Maybe it's some kind of secret old military bunker. It could be government stuff, you know, top secret or something. Shh. Do you hear that? We stopped and stood for a solid minute in silence. Tom, do you hear that? That's a child crying. I could see the panic in his eyes. Then his face fell flat. Probably some idiot having a joke with us. You don't fool us, he bellowed down the black void. The crying persisted. Dude, I think we should turn back. Tom turned to look at me, slapped me on the back with a big grin, and continued down. Seriously, I'm getting really bad vibes from this place. Stop being such a virgin, he grunted. Reluctantly, I followed. I'd lost track of how many flights we had covered. 50? 60 maybe? Tom hadn't spoken a word to me for a while now, which was starting to worry me. I looked up. It was so dark I couldn't even see any light from the top. I turned to see Tom hadn't waited for me. Dude, hold up a sec. His footsteps halted. I walked down 2 flights to join him. He was staring at me with the most glazed over look I'd ever seen him produce. You okay? What's up? Nothing, I'm fine, he said in a flat voice, and continued his descent. I let him. My senses were focused on something else. The crying. It hadn't stopped, but it wasn't getting any louder. Tom, the child, have you noticed? I was greeted only by the sound of footsteps growing fainter by the second. He wasn't himself, and I suddenly felt a piercing solitude that put my nerves on a razor-sharp edge. I hurried down several flights until I found him, motionless, staring over the edge. He seemed oblivious to my presence. I took a few steps back and almost lost my balance. This landing had no railings, only the edge and the ever-growing blackness below. Our flashlights were beginning to dim a little. We had been here for what seemed like an eternity. It was static. Tom still hadn't moved, nor had he listened to my multiple attempts to turn him around. He was gaping into the silence. Tom, you're drooling, buddy, I said with concern. His saliva dropped into the abyss below. The crying had grown distinctly louder. Wherever it was getting closer. I can't stay here forever. It's probably dark outside now. I'm heading back up. You can do what you like. I turned to leave, when Tom dropped onto his hands and knees. Spinning around, anger filled me. Get up, you fool! Do you have any idea how unfunny this is? Funny, he mumbled. The edge beckoned him, and he listened, starting to crawl over it. What are you doing? I tried to pull him up, but was swatted away with ease. Do you want to die? It was useless. Nothing was getting through. He twisted round and suspended himself over the edge, holding on with nothing but his forearms. Staring up at me, he began to giggle manically, spit frothing from his mouth. Suspended in shock at what was going on, I made a lunge to save my friend's life. It was like he knew a second in advance. Blackness consumed him. Not a sound as he dropped into whatever horror lived below. I couldn't move. I could not move. Feeling my sanity cracking, all my voice could manage was a broken Tom? I heard no thud, and only felt a strange fascination to follow him into the unknown. Smacking myself back into reality, it dawned on me what was happening. I had to leave, now, or we would share the same fate. Heart pounding and breath racing, I made it up 25 flights before winding myself after tripping. Silence surrounded me as I waited to recover. Silence. The crying had stopped. Moments later, a distant but hoarse cackle commenced. That got me up the rest of the stairs faster than blinking. Having reached the top, I stood in the doorway a moment to catch my breath. That's when it finally caught up with me. The shape, the smell, the face. It was maybe 25 meters to my right, and left me with the same observing feeling I had before. Never before have I run so fast in my life. The smell was getting stronger. It was closer than before now. I could feel it. In a daft attempt to glance behind, I tripped over my own leg and stumbled to the ground face first. Flipping over, there it was, a large, gaunt, pupilless face. It almost looked sorry for me. I hurled my flashlight at it in some kind of mad self-defense attempt. That seals my fate in darkness. And that is all I have ever known since.